So the question is, should New York City be responsible for immigrants? Well, for any city for that matter. Should any city be responsible for that matter? It says New York puts 30-day limit on sheltering adult migrants with no reapplication. Let's check it out.
Plus, new developments in the city's migrant crisis, the changes that could boot them from temporary shelters. Good Friday evening, I'm Natalie Pascarella. The city says that 183,000 migrants have arrived in the city over 2 years, many filtering into the city's temporary shelters. And now there's a policy shift. Many migrants currently in those shelters will be given housing for 30 days, then they're on their own. News 4 Government Affairs reporter Melissa Russo joining us from Lower Manhattan with the latest.
Natalie, New York City's right to shelter will remain intact, even for migrants. But under this deal, the city will have more power to decide how long migrants who land in our New York City shelters can stay there.
Now we have a workable path forward.
In court this afternoon, Judge Gerald Leibovitz saying the settlement will ease the burden for a city shelter system stretched to its breaking point by thousands of arriving migrants while preserving the safety net.
So that everyone has a right to a bed in safe conditions instead of sleeping on the streets or in waiting room chairs or dying in the cold.
The deal comes after months of intense negotiations. Critics worried the city Adams administration hoped to gut the right to shelter.
From day one, we said that we did not want people on the street.
This new agreement acknowledges the realities of where we are today, affirms our shared mission to help those in need, and grants us additional flexibility to navigate this ongoing crisis.
Under the deal, migrant adults without children will still face a 30-day time limit on shelter. But moving forward, instead of being able to reapply indefinitely for more 30-day placements, the city will now have the authority to decide case by case who gets an extension and for how long, based on extenuating circumstances.
Have they shown that they are making genuine efforts to try to move on? And if they have done that, then that's an extenuating circumstance.
But city officials define those extenuating circumstances differently, emphasizing people who are close to moving out.
Extenuating circumstance could be a situation where you are supposed to leave, however, you've signed a lease and you need 10 days to go. That can be considered an extenuating circumstance.
But the question is, okay, let's say this does happen and you grant them this then what? Then what? What's the solution after that? That's what the people want to know. Because now you're going to see what? Are they going to be in the parks? You're seeing what's happening with the subway. They already had to send the National Guard down to the subway because of the crime has gotten out of control in the subway. And they were showing videos of the homeless sleeping in the subway systems and different things. People are scared. So what's going to happen?
But, without work permits, it's the case for many migrants that they need more than 30 or 40 days to reach financial independence. But you just heard the city's spin on this deal today is basically emphasizing their message to migrants, which is we want you to move along ASAP. Meanwhile, will people end up in the street in reality? The Legal Aid Society says they will be monitoring the situation, and the judge today made a point of saying this, his door will remain open in case this agreement does not work in practice. We're live at State Supreme Court in Lower Manhattan. Melissa Russo, News 4, New York.
Multiple arrests at a hotel in Yonkers that serves as a shelter for migrants. Residents say things got heated yesterday when they confronted hotel staff who they say have been mistreating the migrants and taking things from their rooms. Eyewitness News reporter Marcus Solis is in Yonkers this evening. Marcus?
Sandra, it was last May when the city of New York signed a contract to house 250 migrants here in Yonkers. In nearly the year since, tensions have been running high between the organization that oversees the shelter, West Hab, and the residents. The images are dramatic, the tension at a boiling point. Yonkers police arresting 2 migrants, one of them a woman who was pushed to the ground during a scuffle with officers. The incident occurred yesterday, but many of the asylum seekers say their frustration has been building for months.
Si no teníamos seguridad en nuestro país, para no tenerla aquí.
We escaped our countries because we weren't safe. Now we're not safe here, says this migrant from Venezuela, who's among the 82 families being housed at the Ramada Inn on Tuckahoe Road. Migrants first arrived at the location last May, welcomed with donations from nonprofit groups and Westchester residents. But in the months since, the asylum seekers say they've been harassed by social service administrators and intimidated by security guards they employ.
Robándonos, violándonos nuestros derechos.
The chief complaint is workers entering rooms without warning or with no one present. The occupants have been told the reason is to remove unsafe appliances like hot pots, which are not allowed. My iron, my hair dryer, things for work have disappeared, she says, but others claim money and jewelry have been stolen. They say their complaints are met with calls to the police.
Do y'all see this ending well? This is not gonna end well. I don't see any kind of common ground being able to come to, because people are gonna be in there feeling like they need to make it a home. They need to feel like they need to have certain things in there, and it may be against that company's or that hotel's policies, and they be like, oh, but I need this. I need to be able to cook food for my family. I need to be able to do this. But the hotel is saying, no, you can't do this because of this, and there's gonna be a problem. And you've already seen it, what it's just turned into with this arrest. Like, how is this gonna play? This doesn't end well.
Police. This clip, the asylum seekers themselves called 911, feeling threatened by a security guard walking through the parking lot holding a knife. Back up. Back up, please. Management called police on us today, saying we needed an appointment to visit.
Not today. Not today. Whenever you get a chance, just call and I'll talk to you.
But I got your ideas. Let me ask you.
You guys have to leave, okay?
Social services at the Ramada are being coordinated by an organization called WestHab. The mayor of Yonkers says he's monitoring the situation.
As I've always said, I'm mad at those who brought the migrants to our community, but certainly would never treat the migrants with any less dignity than they deserve.
Yonkers police say there have been 120 calls to this location in the last year compared to 90 the year before that, and one officer suffered a minor injury during yesterday's arrest. We reached out to WestHab, the organization that manages the property. They did not return our calls for comment. And we're live in Yonkers. Marcus Sills, Channel 7. Eyewitness.
Well, controversial new migrant shelter opens at a former manufacturing building in Gowanus, Brooklyn.
The state says the site should be tested for underground contaminants, but the city says that it meets the regulations to become a shelter.
All right, Fox 5's Morgan McKay joins us now in studio with a closer look at the details of what's going on there. Morgan.
Yes, Steve and Natasha, this shelter site, along with around 300 other properties in that area, have been marked by the state for testing to see if there are underground contaminants. But the city says that the shelter site passed its inspection and the state test is not required for them to open. It's one of the most recent migrant shelter sites to open. The Gowanus shelter, located in Brooklyn, opened its doors starting last Wednesday and has a capacity to house up to 400 migrant men. The former manufacturing building is located next to the Gowanus Canal, one of the most heavily contaminated water bodies in the nation. The building is also next to a vacant lot that used to house a gas manufacturing plant. As a result, the State Department of Environmental Conservation has listed the site as one of the properties the agency intends to test to see if underground contaminants are still present in the soil.
I smell a lawsuit coming. You can see the play that's about to happen here. Before it even unfolds, you can see it setting up. You house somebody there, they get sick, they blame it on that testing site there that you put us in for us to shelter here, and they are gonna sue and win big. This doesn't seem like, I hope that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? But tell me y'all not thinking the same thing. Tell me.
Health and safety of everyone in our care is always sort of the top priority.
City Hall defending the use of the site on Tuesday, saying that the shelter meets local and state regulations and passed an inspection from the State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance.
I hope so. I sure hope so, bro. I hate to see this go down the way it looking like it's setting up to go.
On top of that, the city says that the landlord of the building conducted a soil vapor intrusion test and found no indication there are current health risks to the people living there.
We are also working with the State Department of Environmental Conservation to schedule an additional soil vapor intrusion test at this site, which is not mandatory testing.
Neighborhood residents who are part of the 3rd Street Block Association have filed a lawsuit against the city over the use of the site as a shelter. In a statement, the group said, quote, "The use of this property without testing and remediation violates New York City zoning rules and New York State environmental standards and places..."
So they already got one going. This is crazy.
All residents and migrants in danger and exposes the city to long-term liability that taxpayers will be responsible for. To date, more than 189,000 migrants have passed through New York City since the spring of 2022, and the city has opened more than 200 temporary shelter sites.
Last week, 1,500 migrants have come, which means that there's a slight bit of an uptick that we're seeing, so we're always paying attention to that.
And Politico breaking news just moments ago that New York City will be severing ties with DocGo and is declining to renew its contract with this controversial migrant services provider. DocGo is a medical contractor that had previously specialized in COVID testing and was awarded a $432 million no-bid contract last year to provide care for migrants. Stephen Natasha.
Staying with the Adams administration, they say, and they intend to let its contract with the controversial medical company DocGo expire in May.
Now, that company was responsible for providing care to about 3,600 migrants. Good Day's Lizette Nunez is live in Midtown with more on what this means for asylum seekers here in the city. Lizette, good morning.
Good morning, Dan and Tashani. Well, since the get-go, there were a lot of concerns with DocGo. One of those concerns being that the contract with the city was just way too expensive. There was also concerns whether or not the company had enough experience to help with the migrant crisis.
New York City will be dropping its contract with a medical company hired to provide services to migrants. DocGo was given a controversial $432 million no-bid contract to care for asylum seekers. The company quickly faced accusations that range from wasting food as well as hiring unlicensed security guards and mistreating migrants, according to the New York Times. In a statement, the mayor's chief of staff, Camille Joseph Barlick, writing in part, "We are constantly working to find new ways to better serve those in our care and manage the crisis in a financially responsible way. As part of our work to reduce spending, we will not be renewing the full DocGo emergency contract that serves 3,600 migrants at this time." Ooh. The city will work with the comptroller to pursue a competitive bid contract with a different migrant services provider.
So now what happens though, in the wake of them pulling out of this contractual agreement that you had, who cares for them now? Does that now fall back on the hospitals and they now continue to get spread even more thin? Or who steps in? What happens?
Comptroller Brad Lander, an outspoken critic of the company, writing, "After months of warnings about the selection of this vendor and its performance, I'm relieved that the administration finally came to its senses." As New York City continues to receive more asylum seekers, city leaders opened a new shelter located next to the Gowanus Canal in Brooklyn. Neighbors have filed a lawsuit against the city, citing pollution concerns. The city says the shelter meets local and state regulations.
We are also working with the State Department of Environmental Conservation to schedule an additional soil vapor intrusion test at this site, which is not mandatory testing.
So unlike the city, DocGo will continue to serve families living upstate, migrant families and that's to avoid disrupting the children's school year. That's the latest here in Midtown. Dan will send things back inside.
So I have to look and see what all type of services they deal with, not just COVID or whatever, what all that they do. But either way, now who does that fall on is the question.
A group of state lawmakers unveiling new legislation today to crack down on squatters.
That's right. This is more homeowners have come forward with horror stories about the legal hurdles they faced when trying to get rid of these people from their properties.
Yeah, pretty wild stories. Fox 8's Morgan Mackay explains how this new bill could help them.
Squatters do not own property. They are intruders.
A group of Democratic state lawmakers introducing a bill that they say will crack down on the growing number of squatters living in New York City. A squatter is someone who moves into a home without the permission of the owner. At times, they will even produce fake documents to police claiming that the property is theirs.
We are losing more homes in Southeast Queens to foreclosure and squatting than anywhere else in the state.
This bill being introduced defines squatters as intruders under state law instead of tenants who are entitled to certain rights and protections. Right now, under New York City law, a tenant who lives in a home for more than 30 days is entitled to certain due process rights when it comes to evicting them. And with backlogs in court, it can take months for squatters to be evicted. But state lawmakers insist this tenant protection law does not apply to squatters since they are not tenants, and this bill will help define that.
Even after 30 days, a squatter does not have any property rights. The squatter is still an intruder, even after 30 days.
There have been several recent...
It's messed up that you even gotta say that. That you even gotta say that out of your mouth without it, like you being like, bro, this should be common sense.
High-profile cases of squatters, including just recently in the Bronx, a group of migrants were arrested on gun and drug charges and said to be squatting inside a home in Norwood. Young Sobe stood in front of her property in Flushing and said it took 7 months and a $100,000 court process to get her home back from squatters.
It is very traumatic, and it's a nightmare, obviously. I still have a nightmare the day that we found the squatter.
A few city council members also plan to introduce a bill in the coming weeks to make it easier for police to remove squatters and track how often this practice happens. Mayor Eric Adams says he supports these efforts.
A woman's home is her castle, and we're going to look at the law, and we're going to make sure that we are able to protect homeowners in the city.
State lawmakers hope to pass this bill as soon as this month. Reporting from Flushing, I'm Morgan Mackay, Fox 5 News.
Eric Adams announcing plans for a curfew on the Randall's Island migrant camp after 2 migrants assaulted a security guard. And then a migrant was stabbed to death there earlier this year. Remember that. Adams also changing his tune on the city's sanctuary status as the Big Apple faces a migrant crime wave. Watch.
I don't believe people who are violent in our city and commit repeated crimes should have the privilege of being in our city.
And most people agree with that. Adams' remarks coming after the murder of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley, her accused killer, a Venezuelan national who illegally entered the United States in September of 2022 through El Paso, Texas. ICE says he was arrested in New York City last August, but he was released before ICE could actually issue a detainer. Joining me right now with the facts of what's going on is NYPD Chief of Patrol, John Schell. Chief Schell, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure. All of this is more proof to show how broken our system is.
To explain, I want to talk to you about what's going on with this. You're seeing a new crime wave. There are 175,000 migrants in New York right now. Tell us about this new crime wave that you're experiencing.
Well, what we've been seeing with the migrants and the crime wave, if you will, is robberies and purse snatches on mopeds, which we took care of. We'll talk about in a moment. We're seeing pickpockets on the train, pickpockets in Times Square. We're seeing domestic violence, and most recently, we're seeing mob-like activity. People going to stores, Bloomingdale's, Sunglass, LensCrafters just the other day, snatching glasses and fleeing the store.
I saw that video.
Told y'all. What did I say? I said, pay attention to what happened in Oakland. How everything happened in Oakland, those laws were passed, and people felt like, oh, well, I ain't gonna go to jail if it ain't over a certain amount. So they just started just going in and just snatching and grabbing. You saw this wave come through. I said, pay attention to Oakland. Now look at New York.
Video of the same thing at an Apple store.
Correct.
They go in like a mob and they just start taking everything.
Correct. So this is what we're seeing right now, but just like any other crew, if you will, a group of people, we don't care who you are, but when the moped robberies and purse snatches were taking effect earlier this year, we arrested all of them. And guess what? We don't see it anymore. So we have some crews with the migrants committing crime. We're going to deal with them like any other crime wave we have and put them in jail. And quite frankly, what the mayor just said, if you come to this country seeking the American dream, and while you're waiting for your status to be upgraded, and you're committing violent crimes against New Yorkers or this country, you should be put in jail. And once that term is over, you forfeit the right to the American dream and get out of our country.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear you talk like this, Chief, because this is exactly how most people feel. It's how I felt when I saw that illegal come out of being processed and give everybody the finger. And I'm thinking, why isn't this guy on a plane back to wherever he came from right now? What is he doing, giving us the finger now?
A complete slap on our face. And also gives the migrants who are here who want to seek the American dream, who want to work and want to contribute, gives them a bad name. We're talking about a small group of people, not the whole 170,000. But we're going to deal with it. And you're not going to harm New York City. You're not going to harm this country. We're going to try to put you in jail like any other group. And like I said, you forfeit that right.
Well, the NYPD seems a lot tougher on this. You're dealing with it. You're in the front lines than the judges, than the DAs. Do you think you're resonating? Because I know that as soon as you said this is about no consequences, I notice all of a sudden we hear a comment from Kathy Hochul, and all of a sudden we start hearing comments from other people. You and your team are doing this every single day. Do you think you're resonating and changing what's going on in terms of the DA level?
Sometimes. Let's talk about recidivism. Okay, I'm going to give you two critical stats here. We talk about retail theft. In New York City in 2023, 542 people were locked up for theft. Were locked up 7,600 times. How in God's name does this happen? We saw last week the transit conductor sliced on his neck. 1 more inch, we're having a different conversation, all right? Doing his job. Last year, 38 people locked up for assaulting transit workers, mostly conductors. They were arrested a combined 1,100 times. What is going on? What has changed? Well, I'll tell you what's changed. Bail reform changed. Now, some parts of bail reform is good. But let's talk about discovery. The DAs privately applaud us because discovery thrust upon them, they cannot do their job efficiently. Let's talk about judges. If the judges is not going to accept the bail request for recidivism and let people walk out the door, that's hurting the community. The judges are part of the process. I'm part of the process. The district attorney is part of the process. The judge is part of the process. Our elected officials are part of the process. And if you disagree with what's going on, like most of us do, then the change you want, vote for the change you want. Because pre-2020, we didn't have this issue of recidivism. We could deal with it. Now it's harder and harder. And it's hurting our city. And you want to know why transit crime is up? Recidivism.
Unbelievable. This is the kind of conversation that is going to change things. Thank you for being so adamant about this and for telling the truth and for fighting for New Yorkers. That's what you and your team are doing. We've got this new John Jay College of Criminal Justice study on bail reform. It finds the number of repeat offenses increased as a result of the New York soft on crime policies. In the suburbs and upstate, 66% of those released under bail reform with a recent prior...
Well, they say numbers don't lie, bro. If it's up 66%, that's bad.
Arrest were arrested again within 2 years. How do they not know this? You just said this. You live it. Nearly half of the defendants were rearrested for a felony. Under New York's current bail law, there is no money, bail, or jail time for most misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies leading up to trial. So, Chief, that's the point. There's no consequences.
Correct, and there's no consequences, and you have recidivism. Do whatever I want. No, we can't have this anymore. We have to go after recidivism. You just gave out some great stats. I'll give you one more. People locked up for felonies. 60 days later, they're locked up for another felony. What world is this that we're living in? When the process works...
That is a joke. That's a joke. Why would I respect the system then? Why would I respect it? If I know ain't nothing gonna happen to me, that's just like a little kid. If he know there's no consequences to his actions, he gonna keep doing what he doing. Simple, but they make it so complicated.
It's fantastic. When there's a breakdown of the process, you know who suffers? The everyday New Yorker going to work and about their business. Yeah. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a cop by day. I'm a family man at night. I have children out in the streets working, taking the trains like everybody else. I suffer from this also. Yeah. You know, enough is enough. We are going on the offensive. We're going to start calling people out respectfully. Do your job. If everyone does their job, I'm not here talking to you this morning.
I'm so glad you said that. Chief, I want to get your take on something that a senator told me is about to blow up, and that is human trafficking. And I want to see what you're seeing in that regard. I spoke with Kansas Senator Roger Marshall on Sunday, and he told me that the Chinese Communist Party is working with the drug cartels, and they're getting people in over the border, and then once they're in America, they need to pay up. They need to pay the drug dealers. And how are they paying up? They're working in these massage parlors. Here's Roger Marshall. Watch this.
We're seeing an explosion of human trafficking. The Chinese Triad, which is an organized crime unit, a multinational, been around for hundreds of years, is behind this. And wherever you're seeing fentanyl trafficking, you're going to see human trafficking explode as well. We have more massage parlors than we do Starbucks now in Kansas, and certainly I think that can be said in most every state. So this Chinese Triad, I mean, they are sophisticated. Your listeners need to understand that this is not the dirty workers like the cartel. The cartel is doing the dirty work, but the Chinese Triad is very sophisticated, Harvard-trained lawyers, Harvard-trained accountants that master the money laundering part of this. So you're going to see massage parlors spring up, and then next to them might be a restaurant, it might be a hair salon, a nail salon, those types of things.
He says all of these businesses being started up are fronts for human trafficking. Are you seeing that in New York, Chief?
Absolutely, whether it be Asian or immigrant coyotes that women have to pay back. These women are 100% victims. It's terrible. Where we've seen this mostly? In Queens, Roosevelt Avenue. We have shut down this year about 13 brothels that have a mixture of Asian workers and migrant workers. And we're still going after it. And it's terrible. The community applauds us for it. And we're trying to help these women who are victims of these people. It's terrible. The Queens DA is working with us very well with this. The local elected officials are working with us, but it's a problem. We see it.
Wow.
And we're dealing with it.
That is incredible, Chief, that you're seeing that in New York as well. I was so stunned by Roger Marshall there. Talk to us about the drugs. The drugs are also coming in through the southern border. You see increasingly fentanyl laced in everything.
So right now, the common mixture of cocaine, heroin, there's going to be fentanyl in it. Small doses, 2 grams can kill you, 2 grams.
Wow.
We have seized as a city 800 kilos of pure fentanyl in the last 2 years with a street value of $32 million.
Wow.
It is so dangerous, and fentanyl does not discriminate. It doesn't care who you are, where you are, from New York City to the Jersey Shore to wherever else. 2 grams of a young person just using it, maybe peer pressure, can kill you. Can literally kill you. It is so scary, this fentanyl, that we have Narcan with us. When we're around fentanyl, we have to wear masks. The drug dealers know this, and the people buying it on the street don't know this. It's terrible.
This is unbelievable.
It's terrible.
And it's coming, the underlying components from communist China. How are you doing in terms of ensuring that you've got enough manpower out there? I know there was a time there when the Democrats wanted to.
I was just talking about that the other day in the video, man. It feels like nobody wants to be a cop anymore. And can you blame them? You can't. So they need to do something to try to entice and make it more appeasing and do something, because being spread out for the fentanyl issues, the human trafficking issues, everything about the cartel, all of that stuff, plus the migrant issues, they're spread so thin. You having to dispatch the National Guard down to the subway. We are spread thin.
On the police, people are like, I'm not going to become a police officer. Why would I? I don't have they don't have my back. Do you feel you have enough manpower? Do you want to speak to anybody who's considering perhaps joining the force?
So the police department's a great job. It still is a great job. I've done it. I've raised a family. Come join us. It's a noble taking. But yes, we have a little bit of staffing issue. We're down a couple thousand cops. We have a tremendous recruiting campaign to get people to join. We have some classes lined up. But years ago, thousands and thousands applied for the test. Now we're not getting that much. So we're going to keep getting the word out. Keep getting the word out. Come join the department. It's a good living. It's a noble uptaking.
We could not need you more than today, and we appreciate your work and your team.